Oh, and an encounter happened. Let's see. We're good. All right. Hey, everybody. It is me, Barbara Bankston. I am here for another segment of Unmasking. Tonight, I have Miss Ericah Miller with me. I'm excited to have Ericah on. She's doing great things. You're in Dallas, right? In the
Yes,
city
in
of
Dallas.
Dallas, Texas. And I do know Ericah personally, y'all. So it's not like I just picked somebody out. But I love to see people grow. And when I saw that you were in this field and you were exploring, I was like, man, that's a good work and that's a great work. And so I was like, I got to reach out to her because you were already amazing just as you were. But then when you added this into your plate, I was like, man, that's what's up for real, right? And so
Mhm.
I'm excited to have you on tonight. For this next month, we're going to be talking about trauma. And so Ericah is a therapist. She is working through this whole process. She has gone through this process, and so she is here tonight. We're going to discuss trauma, and we understand that trauma can be very sensitive. And I really wanted us to have an expert opinion in this, right? And really talk because I think a lot of people are afraid to deal with their trauma. So before we jump right in there and unwrap it, just tell us a little bit about you, Ericah. Tell us what you're doing, what's going on out there for you in Texas.
Okay. First and foremost, as I met Pastor Barb, she was Barb, but she's Pastor Barb. I met her at church, so obviously I'm a believer through and through. I'm a wife. I'm a mom, and then
Mhm.
in the middle of all of that, I just finished graduate school as a marriage and family therapist. So my focus is obviously the family system. I have a special love for the children who've experienced any form of trauma. So I've dealt a lot with that. And I'm just going through like licensing processes right now and just waiting on things like that and writing books. I have one book out that I co-authored about like different traumas of women. It's on my website, ericajoy.com. And I'm always on the internet on Instagram and Facebook. I'm always joking around, or I'm either sharing something very insightful or just mindful. So that's
Mhm.
what I'm into right now.
Good. You said something one day. I was like, "Oh, she said something. They're not talking loud enough. They might not hear what she's saying." I can't remember what it was. I know I shared it on my Facebook. I was like, and it might have been a TikTok. It was something you said, but it was just so very powerful. And that's probably when it
Yeah.
grabbed me to get Ericah, because this kind
Yeah.
of what she's talking, this ain't normal. So the world needs this. Um, so when I think of trauma, I think of because I do coaching. So I coach, and usually when I'm coaching people, most of everything that is manifesting in their life at adult or teenage years
Right.
is usually as a result of something that happened to them when they were young.
Hmm.
And so and as kids, I have a 6-year-old. I know that as our children don't always know how to express themselves.
Hmm.
And
True.
so I want us to really go in this place for just the importance of when your children, and also giving them techniques of being able to identify, because sometimes I think parents don't aren't aware of when their children may have been in a situation that could have caused them trauma. And it doesn't necessarily always mean sexual trauma. It could literally mean, you know
Exactly.
they've been locked in a
And-
closet. Some kid locked them in a closet. Now that's trauma to them, right? And so
Right.
it's going to create a level of fear. And so I want us to begin to just really unwrap what trauma really looks like in our children. And before we start that, I want to say, if you have any questions for Ericah or for myself, or if you hear something that you would like us to expound on, please put your questions in the comments, and we will make sure that we address any questions that
Mhm.
are in the comment area.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if I heard you correctly, I think you said let's define trauma. Let's talk
Yeah.
about what that is. And so, interestingly enough, so my husband Deontay is also at the tail end of finishing his degree in marriage and family therapy. He's about 6 months behind me, but nonetheless, we take this walk every morning, and we're talking about trauma and different things. And he was saying that something was possibly traumatic for a child. And
Mhm.
so, with my background, I was like, how's that trauma? Ain't nobody touched her, ain't nobody beat her, blah blah blah. And he reminded
Mhm.
me, he said, trauma it can be a subjective thing. It can be based on how that person views it. And
Mhm.
so, like you said, it could be they locked me in the closet for this kid, whereas for this kid, it could be Aunt Sally touches me here every time she
Mhm.
visits, right?
Right.
Trauma to me is any sort of occurrence that shifted your lifelong view of the world, that's turned your life
That's good.
completely around. You see those tornadoes in Oklahoma, right? And the whole landscape is just is toe up, right?
Mhm.
Imagine that being your life and you're trying to put that back together. That's trauma. Like, it's
Right.
completely destroyed your foundation, what you thought you knew and what you believe and your ability to trust and love and different things like that. To me, that's trauma.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Anything that's going to shift your perspective of the world and how you view and how you're able to, because sometimes those traumas will actually handicap you
Hmm.
and it'll stop you from actually living a full life. I know people who have been traumatized and would never drive again. They had suffered from anxiety to the
Sure.
point where they would never get in a car and drive. And so someone always had to drive them because they would start having anxiety attacks behind the wheel and they could never. And that came from a traumatic experience that they just could not let go of. And they're like,
Yeah.
I'm 30 in their 30s and still won't drive as a result of trauma. And it's really, that actually handicaps them from being their best, right? Or living their
Right.
best life, or
Right.
just being able to walk out life in a greater capacity. So let's talk about let's go ahead and talk about kids. We're going to talk about children and when they are before we got on, we were talking, I was in education and I was sharing with Ericah some of my experiences just in the classroom and dealing with children and parents, and how when I was in the field it would upset me because parents um would not handle the trauma that their children, they sometimes, I remember, so I'll use this, and it was a sexual abuse case, but
Right.
the mother was protecting the boyfriend because she understood that she if she said something about the boyfriend, it was actually a protection. So what would you say about what are the signs that your child may be being sexually abused? Let's start there.
That's a good question. So a lot of the signs come through behavior, right?
Mhm.
So I think an example you talked about is like all of a sudden bedwetting, or even number two, and this could be at ages past, potty training that don't really add up.
Mhm.
They have the anger, you have difficulty sleeping, there's isolation, then there's the obsessions or compulsions. All of a sudden, you have a 12-year-old who hates to clean their room. They're always cleaning everything. They're cleaning their body multiple times a day. Whereas typically, if you got a teenage boy, you got to beg him to shower. But
Right.
then all of a sudden, they're always cleaning. Like, what is this obsession with dirt? Why do they feel so dirty? Then I think I said, out of control anger. Changes in eating habits, eating too much, not eating enough. Then there's the obvious sadness. Where does that, when your kid just suddenly switches, that's like Kendall all of a sudden being sad. It wouldn't make sense to me. And I'd be like, what's up?
Mhm.
Also, I pay attention to their interactions with adults, or with kids, because sexual abuse can happen with kids too. Let's put that
Yes.
out there. A lot of there's quite a bit of sexual abuse that's kid on kid,
Yes.
but it's usually something that they've learned, or
Mhm.
something they've been exposed to. So those are a lot of the symptoms that jump out. Changes in grades, academics. It's just
Mhm.
all these sudden shifts in behaviors and things that um, you should pay attention to. Now, if you're not really connected to your kid, you might miss it all. If you
Right.
have good dialogue with your kid, you can miss all of it, which is a whole nother topic about how we communicate with our kids, but those are some of the things that jump out at me.
So as you were talking, I was thinking about like, so with those kind of, even if kids doesn't when kids don't understand the emotion, there becomes a level of shame and guilt
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
becomes attached to this. And so that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes causes them to go to the place of isolation. And
Yeah.
so what if, as a parent, if you actually see your child like retreating without being invasive, because you want your kid to open up to you, but based off of who it is, people will threaten you. Kids will they may get threatened. They may feel like somebody said that I'm going to harm you, I'm going to harm your parent, whatever. You better not tell. How can you, because you don't want to go accusing something, because
Mm-hmm.
you know how you can say, I know something's wrong, but I just can't pinpoint it. Like, I
Right.
don't and when I ask them, they won't say it, but I know my kid, like I know my child, and I know that something's not right. So what do we do as parents? Now I'm flipping to the parent side. So what would I do as a parent to say, hey, I need help because I obviously see that something isn't right, and I don't know how to get them to talk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In situations where there's an open dialogue, okay, I'll tell you my preventive measures as a parent.
Okay.
So I've I'm very probably over the top with the whole what parts are safe for touching, which ones are not. Also, if if that happens, whether it's just a little pet or something a bit more invasive, um, mommy is your advocate, and I
Right.
don't care who it is. You
Right.
know, and for me, it's been situations where a relatives that I love very dearly, they can be kind of old school, and it's like, oh, give your so and so a hug, and if my kids say no, I stand by it, and in front of the adult, if they say no, not today, and so I show them, even in the presence of other adults and kids, if they don't want to be
Hmm.
touched today, that's okay. It doesn't matter if you're the favorite aunt, uncle, grandparent. They don't want it today. That's that. So that dialogue is important with your kids, so they know what's safe, what's not safe. That I will advocate for you no matter what. Doesn't matter
Yes.
who it is.
Right.
Um, I think that's one of the big fears for kids. Like if I say this about this person, it's just gonna disrupt everything. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And they're afraid of the whole cops and the CPS and things like that. I think they need to feel like somebody's going to advocate for me. And
Hmm.
even if this is scary, I'm not going to be by myself. The other thing that I feel like we can do as parents is to, I'm trying to think. I'm always pretty good about asking my kids, how their day was, but I don't just
Hmm.
get it there. I'm always like, anything happen you don't like? And so they're used to me just saying that,
Right.
just right. Like, somebody kept, touching me on my shoulder and it got annoying. And I was like, well, did you speak up for yourself? He's like, no, I forgot. And I was like, well, remember, you can do that.
Right.
You know what I mean? They kept hitting me on my back. I don't care what part of your body is. Body ownership is a big thing. Parents should respect body ownership too. That will
Right.
further give them the message that my body is really mine. Like if I
Yes.
tell my mom no, she can't hug me because she said so. And it's my body.
Right.
But we have difficulty, even lining that up with ourselves because we're like, well, I'm your mom. But if you really want to teach them that whole body ownership thing, we have to respect it too.
I really love how you said that. When I know for my kids when they were young, I was like their strongest advocate. And I
Yeah.
think that my kids was like, look, one thing I know is when I go to I don't know what, I know that my mother has spoken. Brittany was talking about this not too long ago. She's like, I mean, my spot on the bus will change. It'll be all kind of things just changing. And I know my mother done came in there and got all of y'all together because I taught them, look, I don't care if you're wrong or right. I'm still going to be your advocate. Even
Mhm.
if you're wrong, I'm still going to be there. I'm not going to let you drown. Even if you're
Yeah.
wrong, I'm not going to leave you out there. Now, I might make you take accountability, but I'm not going to leave you out there to walk through nothing in life by yourself. So I think that's very important that we teach that to our children when they're young. And I loved how you were talking about ownership of your body. And I think it is difficult as parents. And you made me think because I do this, with Zion sometimes. I'm like, you're not too old to give me a kiss. Give me a kiss. You getting ready to go into school. And not even
Yeah.
just without even thinking, you're not too old, because I want to embrace
You
this
love them.
youthfulness, right? And I know that there's going to come a time when that's just not going to be our narrative. You're not going to want to hug mommy, you're not going to want to hug her in public. You're not want to kiss her in
Yeah.
public. So as long as I got this, and I'm like, you're going in first grade, I still have this window. I know I have this window. I've done this before, so I just want to love
Yeah.
on her so much more. So I get that, but I love how you reminded us that when you do that, you're taking that you're
Body
taking
ownership.
that body ownership, that they realize that this is my body and I get to control who touch. I love, 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 love that, like, teaching it to them from that perspective. So that was awesome. So how do we approach, again, I want us to, if we think that something, so that's very good, because those are preventive measures.
Preventive, yeah.
Unfortunately, especially in our culture, we don't teach, it's not about, let's talk about the family secrets, right?
Yeah. Intergenerational trauma, that's the one.
The generational trauma, the family secrets,
Yeah.
let's talk about that, because I think what happens is, what happened in my house, stay in my house.
Oh my God.
Um, and I get it and I understand it, but sometimes it ain't right. And then we don't create um avenues for our children to have a voice, right? And their voices become
Right.
swallowed and drowned out because our voice is louder. And it's not because we're coming from a voice of protecting them. We're coming from a place of protecting ourselves,
Mm.
protecting our names, protecting our household, protecting our so-called legacy. And then we are creating these children who are, as you were saying earlier, it becomes generational now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it just keeps transcending to every one of the generations because we refuse to deal with it, and we can actually see it and name it. So what about that space of the family secret? So let's talk about, I really would love for you to talk about why it's important, because I think that causes for a mindset shift, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
if we don't understand the detriment of not holding whoever is accountable, whoever it is. It doesn't matter whether it's a brother, sister, it doesn't matter. Like, for instance, I'll use this for instance. This is public. We've heard it in the public about R. Kelly
Right.
and them saying it was his sister who was the first predator to him, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I know that is something that we was heard. That's not something that's uncommon
It's
within
not.
in the family unit, right? And so in situations like that, we keep that stuff under wraps to preserve, like, as if it's going to
Peace.
say something about me,
Right.
right?
You're
As
trying to
a
keep the
parent,
peace.
right? And we keep the peace, and it's going to say something about me as a parent, opposed to protecting the children. But we also know that that comes from a mindset, right? And so,
Right.
speak to, if you could help us speak to the parent who may be dealing with that, like literally you are dealing with that, because we're going to speak to what you do afterwards, but there's some people who are literally dealing with that. They feel like there's a
Yeah.
shame, or there's some level, like it's something I did. Like, there's nothing like something happening under your roof and you feel like you didn't protect your child.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
that's like, you know, something happened to Zion under my roof, and I'm so busy trying to protect her from the outside world. What about when it happens in the house?
Right.
Now,
Right.
that didn't happen in my house, y'all, but I'm just saying. Let's be
Right.
clear. But I'm just saying, but that does happen and it's very common. So how do we speak to, because that
Right.
mindset is telling you, don't you say nothing. People gonna look at you different. They're gonna blame you. So how do you speak to that?
I feel like so, and I've seen that scenario. Unfortunately, I feel like a lot of, at least with sexual abuse, is usually within the family. Unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
it's not the creepy guy at the gas station. It is somebody at the barbecue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, for me, if it were me, if it were my family, um, and for the caregiver, for the parent, it occurred in your house, and you're concerned about your reputation. But if you don't, let's just say that this abuser has abused your child or somebody, and now they've become the person to perpetuate it, and this goes on for generations and beyond your household. Because if that's true about what happened to R. Kelly, you know what I'm saying, had his mom or whoever knew said something, maybe he wouldn't have perpetuated the abuse
Yes.
to hundreds or however many women that happened to. You know what I mean? So I used to tell my clients, like, you speaking up, it did rock the boat in terms of your family structure, but you get to draw a line in the sand to speak out so that if anybody else thinks that we're going to continue this in this family, they're going to think twice, because from here on out, we speaking up. You know what I'm saying? And then
Right.
think about, even if you don't become a person that perpetuates it, suicide is such a common suicide ideation is such a common thought process for people who have been abused. There's so many people, they just want to unalive themselves because the burden of that is so heavy. So for parents, I say, would you rather hold on to your reputation and lose your kid? Even if they don't kill themselves, do you want to lose that relationship with your kid? And to be honest, if it comes out later, everybody's going to side eye you anyway. Best you just
Right.
protect your kid, you know? And in terms of kids, I say speak up because it's just the best thing to do. You could keep quiet and keep the peace, but it's gonna start an internal war inside of you, and
Yes.
this could go on for God knows how long. I mean, I literally I know relatives who are like like on walkers now, just now speaking out about stuff
It's crazy.
that happened, you know. And then we realize, oh well, that's why Aunt Barb so mean, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
this
Right.
is why Aunt Barb so mean. That's why she don't let us go over Uncle, so and so's house. But imagine if they had spoken out so much sooner, and the emotional damage that could have been repaired sooner. And it even impacts how you parent your children,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? So I encourage kids to speak out, and if your parent is not the advocate, you have people within your school system. You have safe adults you can trust. There's a lot of us who have a duty to report. So if you say even a little bit to your nurse, your doctor, the fireman, the policeman, they have
Right.
to report it. So if your mom or dad is trash and they're not gonna report it for you, tell somebody else. Don't stop speaking up until somebody listens to you. That's my advice for kids.
That's absolutely good. Your husband, Deontay,
Yeah,
he made a comment. I just want to share it. He said it's easier to heal from the hurt of the truth than having to constantly dwell on the anger from a lie. And when your parents are not allowing the truth of what happened to you, or they're not acknowledging it, or they're
yeah,
telling you, then that actually provokes anger. It provokes just rage inside of you, because
yeah,
now I've told my trusted source, and they are actually protecting the person who did it to me. It's
right.
almost like you're treating me like I deserved it. And when
Like
they're
I'm
young, yeah, like I deserved it. Like I'm nothing. I'm useless, right? And so in kids, when they're young, their minds cannot their minds can't, they're too young to understand, or how
sure.
to balance out that this isn't them, right? That just because you didn't do that, so then they
Right.
begin to own it like there's something wrong with them, or really it isn't. It's something wrong with you and not them. But they'll begin to feel nasty and dirty, like you were
Mhm.
saying, and they'll start doing different things of that nature. That was so good. Someone
Yeah.
else said, you lose trust in adults when you can't gain the sense of trust. I try to have open, candid conversations with my girls. I think that is a constant place. Like, you, even if they don't open up to you, you have to always make yourself and position
Just
yourself.
make yourself available.
Yes, like I
Right.
am. And one of the things I used to do with my kids to gain their trust was, there was times when they would do stuff, and I know they deserve, I don't know, a spanking. They would deserve something, and I would be like, but if you tell me the truth, nothing's gonna happen to you. And no matter how much they deserve
Do
after they
that.
told the truth, I had to go on and honor that, because I needed them to know that the truth, I will honor the truth, even if it hurts me. Even if the truth hurts me, I can't protect you if you're telling a lie. I
I
can
can
protect you if you're telling the truth. So there was times when and I would say that to them, and I would say, "Oh, they deserve for me to tear their tail up," but
listen.
I wouldn't discipline them. I would talk to them, and I would kind of just, and I said, I'm doing this because I'm honoring that I appreciate you being honest with me. And so I was
Right.
trying to teach them that, the truth goes a long way. And if you
It
continue
does.
to lie, then it's going to be difficult. So I think it's very important that you gain that level of communication with your kids. What were you going
Right.
to
I was going to say it establishes that advocacy
say?
with your kids, knowing that even if I messed up, my mom is still going to advocate for me, even in my screw ups. She's going to help me fix whatever it is I messed up. I don't know if you ever saw that TikTok where Kendall was drawing on my furniture, honey. And I had to honor the fact that she told me the truth, and she did get like a little lecture. You don't draw on furniture, but here I'm gonna help you clean it up. Because if you lied, you wouldn't have been able to get that blue marker off of this white furniture by yourself. You know what I'm saying? And so it creates that
Right.
of advocacy that if I go to my mom and keep it 100% honest with her, she's going to have my back, whether it's my fault or if somebody's hurting me. You know what I mean? Like I can tell her anything.
Right.
And so I think that's great. And I do the same with my kids. We're on the same page with that.
Right. So we've really covered that one of the major things is
Yeah.
that being able to have an open relationship with children. So I can say I have I think I did well with that as a parent, but of course I'm older, right? And so now I get to watch Brittany raise
Oh.
um and so sometimes when I'm watching her raise her son, um and I understand the reason behind, like she gives him a voice, right? So she's
Mm-hmm.
created him, she's trying to teach him to have very great communication skills.
I'm okay
But
with that.
we always got a reason with him though. That's the problem. I'll be like, look, little boy, ain't nobody sitting here. We're not about to have a whole conversation.
But you know what though? I feel like that gives him the opportunity. You know, we were told kids ain't got no wants. Kids ain't
Right.
got no, but like you said, it's creating that communication.
So now so I want us to talk because you're in therapy. And so I mean, you're a therapist. So when you're dealing with children, you're dealing with children from multiple age of parenting. So I want to talk about the parenting, and as the generational, it's not the generational divide. So I think sometimes as there's things that my mom did, I was like, I'm not doing that because I'm going to raise
Yeah.
but there was some good stuff to what my mama did, right? And I think
Right.
sometimes we lose the goodness trying so hard to not raise them like we were raised,
Mm-hmm.
that we almost are hindering them, you know what I'm saying? And so
Service.
for yeah, so we aren't totally because I can't say everything. Sometimes Zion be saying stuff to me. I be like, her siblings be like, "Mama would have took us out the game for less than what you just said." So she done got soft. But the thing about my kids, my older kids, is that they didn't test me as much as she do. This is a
Mm,
different generation of children. Like, and I don't
okay.
know if it was because of how I parented, but there was certain things that they just didn't. And I had very open communication with them. But I find that the child that I have at home with me now, she tests the now we get into parenting more. So
Yeah.
she tests that, and it's not trauma, but it's creating trauma for me. Like I'm traumatized. Eric,
And that's good for you.
there's times I be feeling like I got trauma
Traumatized.
from this.
And every child is different. We can't parent them all the same. She could have been born in 92 and still came out how she came out, you know? Every kid is gonna be totally different.
So I'm not sure if you have expertise in this. I'm going to throw it out there, and if this is outside of your grasp because you do family, it's okay to say
Mhm.
that. Okay.
Okay, okay.
Um, but I would like for us to explore this because I've been seeing this a little more. Right.
Mhm.
I didn't think about this. I probably would have gave you a heads up on this. I don't. So me and Erica didn't have time. We didn't plan. So this is the organic, you guys. But I probably would have, because I would have loved if you had researched just a little bit, because this is something that
Okay.
happened to me. Birthing trauma.
Mm.
And you know how mothers go into postpartum and and then
Mhm.
so there's this, so I had birthing trauma. And so because you deal with family, I'm not sure if you have had the opportunity to deal where it's a result of postpartum or the birthing process is so traumatic and the effects of that. Have you had any opportunity to deal with that? Because I don't want you to feel uncomfortable in a space that I didn't give you an opportunity to really explore.
I'll say from a clinical perspective, no, but as a patient, yes.
Okay,
Um,
let's end at that then.
so, and I don't mind the transparency. So, for me, with the first kid, you know, we conceived very easily without trying. um,
Mhm.
However, at that point, we'd been together 6 years, married for one. And so, you know, that just shifted the dynamic of my life completely because I'm used to all this freedom. I eat cereal for dinner if I want. Sometimes I cook, you know, and then I'm 100% responsible for this person. And, you know, marriage looks different when you become a parent. So we're trying to pivot and navigate that. And so at that point, I can say, as just on a personal level, I felt some sadness. You know, I felt some sort of emotional strain just from feeling like my life shifted and I didn't have 100% control and feeling pulled in all these different directions. That's when I began to seek therapy for myself. And I
Okay.
went, um, oh my gosh, I went for 2 years straight by myself. And me and Deontay also went together for those 2 years. And it was like the best thing ever for me. Just to have somebody who was seasoned. And I do have preferences in terms of how you choose your therapist. I wanted somebody with life experience who was a mom, who was a wife at some point in their life, whether divorced or currently married, you know something, you know?
Right.
And so that was the route that I took. And then again, when Kendall came around, I felt some of the same stuff. And so unfortunately, my first therapist passed away. So I found somebody else and I was judging a book by a cover. I wanted her to look like me in some form, you know, be a wife, whatever. And I ended up finding a therapist who whose husband was also a therapist. You know, she got curly hair like me, you know what I mean? And so I think it's important that when you have things like birthing trauma, that you don't just try and fend for yourself. Um, Reach out, get help, professional help, and there's a lot of resources in terms of therapy, like Open Path and universities where if you can't afford therapy for 150 an hour, they have what you call a sliding fee
Mhm.
scale. And so if you make 25 per hour, then they're only going to charge you 25 for that 1 hour. So I just say use your resources, get therapy, that sort of thing. In terms of clinical experience, I haven't really dealt with moms who had that though.
Okay. I had a very, and I, because I've noticed more mothers who have had like this birthing trauma, either birth,
Yeah.
I had trauma through birth, right? I had both
Okay.
trauma through birth and then I had postpartum. And I know that that affects the family as a whole. It affects how you treat your other children. Affects how you, like, and it's hard. Like, I know when I had Zion, I didn't want nobody to touch her. I had this anxiety and this fear. Felt like
Oh,
somebody was going. My mom, you can't hold her while you. Now my mother's been holding all these babies her whole life, but you can't hold this baby because you got some coffee in your hand, and that coffee just might spill onto the baby, and I can't let you
yeah,
hold her and drink that
yeah,
coffee. It just became. It was just like really that petty, but it was in my mind. And nobody ever mentioned therapy to me, right? My
really.
doctor did, no one, and I did not think therapy even through the birthing, and they knew that it was very traumatic. I almost died having Zion, so they knew that and I ended up in ICU. She ended up in
Wow.
NICU, and she was a baby. I forgot what they call them, rainbow babies. So she was a baby after the loss of a baby, so there was already that fear of losing
Okay.
her while I'm
Wow.
pregnant, and then
Yeah.
getting to this place, waking up in ICU without her there. So that was traumatic, trying to figure out where did this baby die too? You know what I'm saying? So
Oh,
just
yeah.
trying, so that trauma, and then getting her and never wanting anyone to touch her. So it just became this I had gone through so much, and it was funny as I was preparing for this in prayer. Zion suffers from separation anxiety from me.
Really.
Yes, and it was crazy because when I was in prayer, I was praying for preparing for this, the Holy Spirit said that's because of the trauma y'all endure during the birthing process,
Mm-hmm.
created a trauma bond.
Okay.
Like,
Right.
so that's the problem that she has with this separation, this fear of separation. And so, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm getting on with Erica. Me and Erica gonna get this girl free because I'm ready to be separated.
Oh, so you feel like you may have passed that along to her to some degree.
I don't know if I passed it along, or I must. I just really feel like there's clearly a trauma bond. I'm over it, but she's not.
Yeah.
Like like she will literally go be with her dad, and she's on that phone with me, and she'll be
Mhm.
on that phone with me. She want to video me, and she just wants to be there. She just wants to sit and look at me, like
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
I don't want anything, mom, are you trying to go to sleep? Yes, I am. I'm trying to go to sleep. She wants to just look at me. She just, and she doesn't want to get out. So me and her father have to be really intentional about, okay, Zion, mom's going to
Right.
sleep, you going to sleep, mom is there, you're safe. You know what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
I literally, as I was praying, and so I said, oh, I got the therapist, and I just thought about this as we were talking, like because
Yeah.
I think it has created a level of fear in her sometimes, like, where
Mhm.
you going? It's like when I leave the house, where are you going? What time you coming back? It's almost like she feels like I'm not coming back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it creates a level of anxiety inside of her. And I know that it's like a trauma bond. And so I was
Yeah.
like, so what are your thoughts on that? You
Sounds like we
giving
have
me
the
a
same
lesson.
fear.
You gonna tell me I need to send you an invoice, or you gonna send me an invoice to
No,
go to
no, no,
sleep?
no. I'm gonna relate to you because I mean Kendall is that way. And so what I've been trying to do is like incentivize her independence, right?
Mhm.
So if she can stay in her room all night from one night, that's one thing. We hit 2 nights, there's a reward with that. If there's three, so I do that. And also I pay attention to kind of encouraging her independence in the daytime because I like Kendall she's not a COVID baby, but most of her life has been in a pandemic from the time 2 to 5. And we're still here. And so she was
Mhm.
at home with me the whole time and I work from home. And so we are like, you know what I'm saying? So she's not accustomed to. So I don't know if it's partially the environment that we live in. Like kids have been a little closer to parents than usual. They don't get to spend all that time with school. Um, so I don't know if you can find ways to reward her for her independence. And then I do incorporate God, right? Because
Of course.
mom can't save you all the time. Mom can't be with you all the time, but God is. And God is there to help us feel safe, especially when we feel worried. And I give it to her in the Message Bible. The scripture is on the wall, and she's like, "Well, why can't you see God?" I said, "God is like Star Command. You remember Buzz Lightyear, and everything came from Star Command, and Buzz did it. Star Command could protect them. It worked on Bryce, and I'm almost there with her. I'm like, God is like Star Command. He's your person. He can tell you even though you can't see him, and he can always keep you safe. So we're working on her concept of God, and she's starting to understand like even without parents, I have the ultimate. Pairing that with a little incentives, I'll let you know how it works. She has not been in my bed since Wednesday though, so that's we starting off all right. It's
Now
getting
I'm
better.
good with the bed. She don't sleep with me, which is good. Only time she'll want to sleep with me is if she's not feeling good. So I'm good on that. But all day long,
Yeah,
and I do have to come in there and rub her to get her to go to sleep.
so it's still yeah, and I think my goal as a parent, if if I kick the bucket, I need them to be somewhat prepared or be able to live without me. If they feel like they can't live without me, then I don't feel like I'm doing my job as a parent. And granted, they're still young, but I feel like that should be the goal of every parent. Like if our children are like so dependent on us that they can't function and like, you know what I'm saying? And so that's my goal. I'm
Absolutely.
just trying to encourage her independence. You know what I'm saying? And I know she's 5 and your baby, you said 6?
Yeah.
Is she 6? Yeah. So
She's
I mean
six.
that's age appropriate. It's age appropriate right now, but I'm still trying to like gradually increase that independence. And they're girls, so they love mommy. It
I know.
might
I was
it,
just
it
hoping.
may
I love
I don't
them
have a
too,
clinical
but
answer yet. I'm struggling myself.
wait, and yours isn't trauma bond. Mine is definitely trauma bond. Yours is not a trauma bond.
No, maybe it's just an age appropriate thing to a degree.
And I'm sure it is because I'm seeing as she's getting ready to go into first grade. I've watched her, and so when she's in front of certain people, she doesn't want to be as clingy. So I'm thinking that as she grows a little older, that she may come out of that space of just like So I'm trying to see if it's. But when we in this house, that's not the way it is. Like she's laying on top of my legs and whatever. But I do see that when we're not in the house, she's starting to kind of move a little ways away. I try to foster independence too because I believe that independence is very, very important. But I just wanted to
Yeah.
get your take on that. So is there anything else you want to unwrap anything else? Anything else you think that we left out?
I don't know. It's you in charge.
I just want to make sure. Let me see. I want to make sure that we
You know what
kind of
though? I'm
unwrap.
lying. I'm lying. There was one more thing. You remember you asked me like signs of like sexual abuse. The other thing, the
Yes.
very obvious thing, is sexually acting out. That could be inappropriate use of technology. All of a sudden, you got a 7-year-old searching for porn, or they're acting out on other kids, or promiscuity in general. Those are like really, 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 really big red flags. And for me, I'm not. It's awkward, but I'm not afraid to talk to my kids about sexual things, and so it's not awkward in case they need to come to you about that. If you
Right, right,
ask
right.
Bryce, he's gonna tell you exactly how it goes down. It's pretty much science to him at this point, in terms of what that is. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's another thing. I did forget that. I meant to circle back.
So when did you start talking to Bryce about that?
Little by little, but we had an in-depth conversation maybe when he turned 10, because I realized I was behind the 8 ball when I started counseling kids. They're talking about sex in fourth and fifth grade, and I mean
Right,
in
right.
depth.
Yes.
So I started talking to him about it then, and I did give him like some age appropriate literature, to let him read, or I read with him. Then we circle back about, okay, what do you think about this? What did you think about that? What's your understanding of this? And I probably have to circle back again because he's going to sixth grade this year, and I know it's going to become more intense.
That's crazy.
You know,
I can't believe he's that old. That's crazy.
he's that old and he's taller than me.
Yes. Brittany just said there. So one of my daughters is my bonus daughters. She is
Okay.
a teacher and she's a teacher in middle school. And she's always talking about just how far advanced they are. And she's like 29, I think 28, 29 years old. So
Mhm.
she's not that far removed. So she's not like she's real old, but she sometimes is baffled by how early these children are engaging in these emotions and we can talk about this too because when our children are exposed to sex or when they're awakened to it, unfortunately they're also awakened to some emotions that are attached to
Mhm.
sex, whether
Right.
it's sexual abuse, whether it's consensual sex, whether at certain ages, then it creates these emotions inside of them that they really don't have.
They don't have
They're
the
not
emotional
able.
bandwidth for that.
Yeah, they don't have the bandwidth. They don't have the ability to really um to understand that emotion. They don't
Mhm.
have the Yeah, they don't have the bandwidth. They don't know how to deal with it, and but they really think they're in love, right? And that's how added trauma, another level of trauma, something traumatic begins to add on to them in their life because they have exposed their body to something that their heart has does not have the capacity for. And so
Right.
um
Yeah.
I don't even know how to unwrap that because that's really, I mean, I think that parents can teach their children and they can teach their children and they can teach their children and they can do everything right and a kid can still go out there and do it and be
Absolutely.
and expose. I mean, I think you could prep your kid and prep your kid and prep your kid, but the way the society is made up, that peer pressure from that space, some of the things that I've heard, the kids that I know should not be engaging in some of these things by the way
Right.
they're raised. um how I know your parents are having these tough conversations with you, young girls, where I know your moms and dads are teaching you the value of your body, all that stuff, and it seems like it just went out the window. And it's like, how? Like, literally, how did you throw all of your self-worth out of the window and bow to the peer pressure, right? So it
Yeah.
really becomes, and now you, and it goes into, these things happen to you at a young age, and if we cover these things up or we don't deal with them properly, they manifest throughout your entire life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so let's speak to that a little bit, like, of why is it important to deal with it regardless to what it is, no, regardless of what age it is, whether, especially in that sexual area.
Mm-hmm.
It's important because that begins to, like, totally, we talked about R. Kelly, but I'm talking about even deeper into not just
Right.
the, your choices become altered.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like your choices. I wrote a book. I don't have the book up here with me. I'm in my office, so I don't have a book with me. But one of the things that I said is that when I was a little girl, I used to always wait on my dad. I loved my dad. And so I would wait on my dad to come to the house, and I would sit out the window and I would be waiting for my dad. And I loved my dad like crazy, like most girls do. They
Right.
just love their daddy. I love my daddy. My daddy couldn't do no wrong all while he was doing wrong. He couldn't do it. But what I learned about when I went through my journey is I wanted my dad to choose me. Like, I got tired of being, at some point I was a little, there was trauma being attached to me as I was a little girl looking out the window,
Mm.
waiting on you to show. That was you,
Yeah.
that was a point of rejection for me, really,
Right.
whether I didn't know it or not. And my mom just let me sit she's like, I'm gonna let her sit there and wait on him. I'm not gonna sit up here and keep telling her that she gonna have to learn this lesson for herself. So she let me
Mm-hmm.
sit there. And I think when I was in a relationship, as I began to get in these relationships, I had succumbed to, if you just choose me, just choose me, just choose me, right? It
Yeah.
didn't matter, nothing else mattered. And you didn't handle me right. But I never, that wasn't the standard I was looking for. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
because I lacked something in my life at some point, that I was traumatized, and that trauma carried over to a
Mm-hmm.
place in my life that wrecked my life.
I
It didn't
understand
wreck
that.
my life there, but it wrecked my life over on the other side because it
Yeah.
was never dealt with there. And so let's
I,
talk about that, like the
yeah.
importance, and kind of unwrap, because that happened in the childhood. It didn't happen in the adulthood. It just caused me to make some really poor choices in adulthood, and it literally changed the trajectory of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I can,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it all worked together for the good, but let's be
It showed
clear,
up.
God had to
Yeah.
work a mess out.
It showed back up in multiple scenarios. It to me, that sounds like, so there's attachments, right, that
Mhm.
we create with our moms, with our dads, and they can be secure where we tight, they're consistent. Then you have insecure attachments where it's not consistent or it just was non-existent, just all these things. And then you have those ambivalent, and then you have just like avoidant altogether. And so when we have those insecure attachments with our caregiver, and this is where my science nerd comes in. When we have those insecure attachments with either caregiver, either parent, is gonna show up later.
Mhm.
And if we don't identify that, is gonna show up in our relationships for sure. And so I have the privilege of having, multiple parents. I have like stepmom, stepdaddy, all of that, but still a blended family is a blended family. So I didn't get to live with each parent. I was with my mom most of the time because, keep in mind our parents a lot of times were young or whatever, and they're searching for love too.
Right,
And
right.
so my misinterpretation of that as a little girl was, I'm never going to be first you know it was like, oh, my dad, he has to get married, so I'll never be number one. So when I got to Deontay, I was like, well, I know, somebody gonna be over me. He was like, girl, I married you, like, you number one now. And so I was like, so you sure it ain't your mama? You ain't got a favorite, you know what I'm saying? And so it took a lot of, again, therapy, which thankfully we got early on in marriage, for me to unwrap that and to break down that misinterpretation that I wasn't a priority to
Yes, that's
him
good.
or to my dad, who's amazing. Even as I had the best stepfather, and even then I was like, well, he got other kids, so I can't be his number one either. You know what I'm saying? And
Right, right.
so we misinterpret a lot of that. And then when it comes to your dad, I don't know how old he was when he had you, but a lot of times we have to attach their maturity level to how they parented back then.
Mhm.
And when you think of that, you can kind of release, you can add a lot of grace to that. If your dad was 21 and your mom was 25, you realize they knew what I probably knew, if not less, at that
Right,
age. And so that was literally their best. And don't
right.
take it personal, don't take ownership of it being something, some sort of insufficiency within you, because we carry that insufficiency into our relationships. And it's not really for us to own. We need to unpack it. We need to pray and see Jesus and the therapist about it and move into our relationships a bit more healthy, you know?
I totally agree with you. I totally unpacked that. You know, I shared it, but I because I had to find a place of acknowledgement. So I'm bringing it out because I really want us to be able to acknowledge that some of the things that happen to us, they literally happen as a result of something. My dad was
Yeah.
older, my mom was younger, right? And so I understand the dynamics. I understood what happened. It took me so long to figure out what happened. Like it took me
Yeah.
a long time to figure out and trace it back to this what you've been doing? This what's been
Yeah.
going on in your mind? This is why you making all these bad choices, girl. You better go on and forget this man and, and go on with your life, right? And so that's what I did. But I think it's just very important that we literally I I know this now, but I wish I would have knew it then.
Hmm.
I wish my mom would have knew
Right.
so she
Right.
could have parented me different.
Mm-hmm.
Because as a parent, but I don't think she knew. She was probably like, you sitting up here loving your daddy and your daddy not coming, and you go sit here and act like he does. Because you know, kids just do it. Like this is the best thing. This your cheesecake, key lime pie, your ice cream, your caramel. And I don't want to beat you. I don't want to bash your father. My mother never bashed my
Right.
father.
And that's good that she didn't. She let you draw your
Yeah,
own
she let
conclusion.
me come to my own conclusion, but once I got to this conclusion, she also never said, "Well, that's your conclusion." But I don't think she thought of. I don't think she did it in a you know, in a. I don't think she never. I'm just saying it. Yeah,
Right.
I think because you got to understand the parenting and the parenting style and the time that I grew up and all of
Right.
that. But I'm saying how wonderful it would have been. And so we're speaking to now. So as parents, when you see these insufficiencies so that children don't become or use these things and make them their own, we have to we know them, but we also have to deal with them, right?
Yeah.
And it's okay to send your child to therapy, right? Because
It's okay.
again, having a therapist could seem like a stigma because a lot of us don't get it till we're old when can't nobody see us going in there.
Right. But everything's virtual now. You can get therapy right in the bed, you know,
Right.
on your phone.
And so I think it's important that we understand that it's okay to send our children to therapy.
I
It's
agree.
okay because I think that there's many things that would help them along life if they got help early. There's no
Yeah.
sense of continuing to allow the trash to be put
That's
in the
true.
trash can of their hearts, waiting for them to get old where we feel like they're old enough to deal with it. They can't deal with it and they're still having to deal with it when they're 5, or they're still having to deal with rejection when they're 8. And you know
Right.
what I'm saying? So let's go ahead. They're dealing with the sexual abuse. They're not gonna when they're older, they're not gonna deal with it better because now they've carried it inside of them and it's kind
Yeah.
of created something inside of their heart, whether it's
Especially.
shame, whether it's guilt, whether it's revenge, whether it's resentment, whatever that is. I remember hearing a story of a young lady. She said that her father had molested her and her mother had protected him, and when she got old enough she left, and when she found out they died she was relieved.
Mm,
She
yeah.
never went back. But I never would want my but she so her relief didn't come to the parent died. The parents died. Like
Yeah.
what lived that level of anger lived inside of her, that bitterness was inside her, that pain was actually inside of her for all that time waiting on her parents, and she didn't get
Mm,
any relief until they die, because we keep these secrets, these family
yeah,
secrets, and we don't protect our children. We protect the victim, the predator instead of the
yeah,
victim, right?
yeah. And I think also with you saying like senior kids to therapy, in general for your kids or ourselves, we don't have to wait until something's wrong. You know, we
Yes.
should go as a preventive. You go for your mammogram, you go for your physical, you get your teeth cleaned. Let's go for preventive so we can just learn how to live life. And then also, let's not be afraid to be involved in it as a family unit. Like, what sense does it make to have 4 tires and one tire got good tread and the other 3 trash? This car, this family car is not going to run right. So let's all get ourselves together because everything is interconnected. And I don't think people always understand that. They just look at one person and be like, oh, you the crazy one or you the one with the problem. When it's really everybody. We all impact each other.
I like that. And so, do you do when you so you're a family therapist, have you had the opportunity to sit down with, because I know sometimes, for instance, we'll use divorce. It's common, sorry.
It is.
So when you go through a divorce and you have children involved, there will be power in therapy in that. Family therapy, because everybody,
Family.
each person probably need, depending on the dynamics of the family and depending on how the breakup actually takes place,
Yep.
everybody might need their own individual therapy, but as a family unit, how do we coexist together really matters, because that's trauma. That literally, that
It's a
divorce
death.
yes, that's a death of something, so that's a loss of something, so that's a trauma that is happening. No matter how you slice it, no matter how you dice it, nobody wins in those situations.
Exactly.
We be free, but we don't win.
Right. Right.
You free,
It's a
and
ripple
God can
effect.
heal you. Yeah, he can heal you, but like you said, it's a ripple effect. And so sometimes in the ripple effect, somebody gets a higher wave than somebody else, and they
Mm,
begin to drown where the other people didn't. They could float. And
yeah.
there's that one person, whether it be the mom, whether it be a kid, whether it be the father, they're drowning in this thing. And so if you bring the family together, we can all float and make it out of this
Exactly.
thing, opposed to somebody drowning because their emotions is different than your emotions, because that's going to be perception at that point. It's going to be how you receive that thing. It's going to matter how you come out of it.
I agree.
So how hard is it to get a whole family to go into therapy?
It depends. In abuse situations, it depends on their support level of the person that's been hurt. You know, if they believe their kid even a little bit, then it's easy for them to come and get the family session and they get the caregiver, parent counseling because they have a level of guilt and shame attached to. I let my kid get abused, and it's not necessarily a let. If somebody wants to abuse you, they're gonna, slither around to find their opportunity, right? It's not always because you're a bad parent. But in situations where it's not abuse, it just depends on if they're seeing this on a grand scale of how is this going to help us, or how can I help my child? You know what I mean? And if I say, well, you need to come too, your child just came out of the closet as LBGTQ, and it's going to impact you too. And there's a lot that you probably don't understand. So let's bring it all together. And if the concern is for the family and the child all together, then they gonna come. But if they feel like I ain't got no problems, this all them, it's not me, then it's a lost cause. And so at that point, if you can't get the family or the spouse or whomever to join, then my focus of treatment is how can I help you come up with survival and coping methods in that environment that's a bit challenging for you.
Right. That's good. That's good. I thank you. This has really been really, 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 really good. I encourage people always. So I coach you therapy. So no, Ericah gets to take you in. And you know what? When I'm coaching people, sometimes I tell them, I'm sorry, you need a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm honest. Like I know
That's
you
good.
you come to me when you're done, but I need you to go into therapy. And then when you're done with your therapy, we can come coach you through to the next place. But right now, and I'm able to recognize that, and I'm not foolish enough, because it's not about money. It's really about getting you healthy and getting you healed. And so
Mhm.
I appreciate the work that you do, even going into that space, because you get to go into a place of people lay their vulnerabilities and their pain before you, and you get to help them you get to help be the light in the compass that actually brings them out of
Right.
their dark places. And so I really, really appreciate that you took on that burden, because that's a heavy burden, ma'am. And I appreciate that you took on that burden, and it's clear that your heart, um, you need a lot of prayer going into this
You do.
to deal with the children. You need a lot of prayer, because because it begins to weigh on your heart, when you
Mhm.
leave sessions and you have to just detach from what you just experienced with these children. So I really do, I appreciate that you have put your hand to this level of, I know it's
Mhm.
not ministry, but it's ministry in a different way,
It
but
is.
yes. And so you have put your hand to this level, and so I really do appreciate that this is, you're good at this, you're very good at this. So I wanted to just say thank you for joining us tonight. If you have any questions for Eric and I didn't see any questions. I seen a couple people just make some comments. So we really thank you for your comments. Erica is going to tell us again how she can be reached. In the very beginning, she told us she had a book out, but we want her to share. She has a book out and how she can be reached.
I'll share. I'll put it in the chat too because I've been in here the whole time. I just wanted to be engaged. So it's on ericajoy.com if you want to buy the book that I help co-author with a lot of other awesome ladies. If you just want to keep in touch with me, you can find me on Facebook at Erica Joy. You can find me on Instagram at Erica Joy. Every now and then TikTok, Erica Joy. It's all Erica Joy across the board. And more to come. I'm working on things.
Yes, I'm super excited. So this whole month of I just was led. It's not mental health month. There's no reason. It's
Yeah.
because I've written a book and I've had so many people call me, and when they call me, I've had so many calls and I've spent so much time just talking to people, and a lot of it is dealing with their trauma. And I
Yeah.
said, God, what do I do? And so for this month, we're really going to deal with trauma. And I wanted us to start off with the family unit. Next week, I am going to have prophetess Pastor Demita Chandler. We're going to come on and we're going to deal with
Yeah.
women in trauma. So we're going to deal with the women in trauma next week. And then the week after that, we're going to have Q Morgan.
Okay.
We're going to deal with the men in trauma.
Mm,
And then the week after that, we're going to deal with trauma and the effects on your body with
yeah.
Angel Hollins. She is
She's good.
yeah, she's certified herbalist. So we're going to deal with the effects of trauma and how it affects our body, because it
Mhm.
can manifest in our body. And then in the very last week, we're going to deal with the spiritual side of trauma and the effects of and so we're going to talk about inner healing. And I'm going to do that with my brother, Prophet Ray Bond Shipman, and Pastor Nakia, Prophetess Nakia Shipman. We're going to talk and we're going to unwrap that together. So I'm super excited because so many people are hurting and they don't know how to get out and they can't see their way out. And there are people like you, I know your
Mhm.
husband, who are going to be licensed. This is their hand. This is what they're putting their hands to help people get out of these spaces and
Mhm.
to help preventative measures so that you don't find yourself in these spaces. Because some people come to a therapist before they get there.
Yeah.
There's beauty in that, especially in marriage. There's beauty of getting there before before it's broken. There's just a little crack. It's a fracture. Let's get there and
Right.
get that
It's
sealed
about to
up.
hit the fan. Let's start now.
Right. So yeah, again, so I'm looking forward to this month. We're going to explore trauma, and we're going to get healed and whole. Not just healed, we're going to be healed and whole. And so
Holistic.
again, I thank you so much, Erica, for joining
You're
me. Thank
welcome.
you, everyone, for tuning in. We pray that you were blessed on tonight. I love you. I pray that God just gives you a great measure and great favor in your endeavors and what you're doing. I believe you're going to be great anyway. I know you're going to be great. I'm going to be sitting from the sideline.
I appreciate you.
I am. That song came to me, but I ain't going to say it like that. That's what Deontay was saying. There goes my baby. I'm like, there it goes.
Sister.
There it goes. I'm going to be like, she doing that. Listen at. Yeah, so I'm excited.
I
My kids
love
are going to
it.
give me, they're going to say, you were corny, mom. But
I
I
love
love you.
you.
I thank you so
Love
much.
you
We
too.
appreciate everyone. Thank you so much. We're gonna go in the back room. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye-bye.